Welcome to the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse Two-Generation Approaches to Working with Fathers webinar. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Nigel Zann. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to our National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse webinar, where we're going to talk about two-generation approaches, as you heard. And you probably know, but we provide these webinars and other resources at fatherhood.gov on behalf of the Federal Office of Family Assistance. We really see this as a learning community that you can contribute to and learn from. And so, as always, we welcome and encourage your input and participation today and afterwards. We always encourage you to reach out to us. As the operator pointed out, the webinar is being recorded, and the recording, along with the transcript and all the presentation materials, will be posted on the website in the next few weeks. So again, please check back to review that, and you can also see the recordings and materials from all the previous webinars that we've done at fatherhood.gov/webinars. And as you see on your screen, we will have well, you don't see it on the screen yet, but we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And so we ask you to use the Ask a Question box there. If you have any questions for the presenters, you can also see that chat box on the left, and that's what you can use just to chat among yourselves a little bit. But if you do have a question for the presenters to respond to at the end of the webinar, please do put that in the Ask a Question box. And if we don't have time to get to all the questions, we do post answers to the remaining questions on the website as well. You also see on your screen at the bottom left-hand corner, there's some web links. So there's links to fatherhood.gov and our Twitter page, our Facebook, the past webinars, and then each of the agencies that is presenting today, there's a link to their websites for more information. You can also download the presenter bios from the resource box, and we also have a list of resources there with more information about two-generation approaches, and we'll probably be adding to that after the webinar, but that in final form will also be available to download from the website afterwards. So before we go any further, I'm going to invite Damon Waters from the Office of Family Assistance just to say a few words of welcome and set the stage for today's conversation. Damon.
Thank you, Nigel. And welcome to everyone. Like Nigel said, this is Damon Waters from the Office of Family Assistance, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar about two-generation approaches to working with fathers. This is a topic of interest to many of the programs that we work with at the Office of Family Assistance. Although all of our programs are focused on strengthening families, until recently the focus has been on either children or parents. To better serve families, we are very interested in the application of two-generation approaches that attend to the needs of parents or caregivers and their children simultaneously. Most two-generation work to date has been with mothers and their children. Although the ultimate goal of most fatherhood programs is enhanced child well-being, only a few focus directly on the needs of the fathers and their children. Two-generation approaches that link services for fathers with services for children could increase program impacts and amplify outcomes for children and families. Some child-focused programs, particularly in the Head Start community, are providing services for fathers of participating children. There may also be opportunities for father-focused programs to link with established educational or health services for children. I hope you find the webinar informative and helpful. We'll be asking 2 poll questions during the webinar to get an idea of what you do in your programs. This helps our presenters frame their comments to fit your experiences. We'll also ask for your feedback about today's conversation at the end of the webinar. Please continue to send any ideas or questions to the Clearinghouse team at info@fatherhood.gov. Again, info@fatherhood.gov. We're particularly interested in feedback about the information we are providing and any topics that you would like to cover in future webinars. With that, I'll turn things back over to Nigel.
Thank you very much, Damon. And you'll see on your screen now, we just have a slide for those of you who aren't familiar with the Clearinghouse, just a little bit of an overview of who we are and what we do. So we provide resources, again, on behalf of the Office of Family Assistance for fathers, for fatherhood programs, and all other stakeholders are interested in this work. And you can see links there to our toolkit, which has various tips for fatherhood programs. As Damon mentioned, you can contact us at info@fatherhood.gov. We always encourage you to share the phone number for our national call center with any fathers or mothers who may have questions and issues. We have trained mediators on that line who can talk to parents who may not be getting along, or they can just answer any general questions. They can connect you to resources in your local area. And as you see, that number is 1-877-4DAD-411. And you can engage with us via fatherhood.gov on Facebook and also via Twitter. And so here's our goals for today. We're going to focus, as Damon explained, on really I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing about this two-generation work, and a lot of the work to date has been with mothers and children, and I think people are just really starting to think more now about how do we apply this to work with fathers, and so that's what we're going to delve into today a little bit. Just think a bit more about how we can perhaps more intentionally provide services for fathers and children at the same time, and to the extent that programs can't do that under one roof, which certainly is not an expectation, I don't think. How do you link with other people to help you do that? And our presenters today to sort of take us on this journey, I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. First of all, we're going to start with Miss Wanda Walker from the Jeremiah program in Minneapolis. Wanda's going to set the stage for us by really sort of going over some of the key concepts of the two-gen work. We're going to talk about the work they've been doing there for quite a while now, and it's been very well received in terms of working with mothers and children. And recently in the last year, they've been doing some research to see how they can perhaps involve dads a little bit more. So we're looking forward to hearing from that. And then Tony Judkins is going to give us a state-level perspective from Connecticut, and he's going to talk about their fatherhood initiative, and also the fact that they're one of 7 or 8 states across the country that are participating in a national policy academy that's focused on two-gen work, and I believe they're the only one of those that's actually intentionally looking at doing work with fathers, mainly non-custodial parents. Then finally, we're going to hear from Corinne Cadet and Rodney Lawrence, both from Atlanta. Corinne, as you see, is with the Center for Working Families, so that they're a workforce development agency, and they're working in partnership with the Sheltering Arms Childcare Agency. So they're bringing a very interesting mix of workforce, early childhood, childcare, and fatherhood work together under pretty much one roof, as they're going to explain. So before we go to Wanda, we're going to do a quick poll question. We just pull the poll question up, and as Damon explained, we're going to have a couple of poll questions just to really help the presenters get a sense of what your basic knowledge is of the two-gen model. I see you starting to reply there, so we just want to know, are you very familiar, somewhat familiar, just a little, or not at all with this two-gen perspective? And it looks like the majority of you are either very familiar or somewhat familiar, so that's very good. Give you another second to reply to that. Okay, so yeah, for those of you who can't see the answers, the vast majority of you have said somewhat familiar, and then we have a fairly even spread across the rest of them. Okay, so thank you very much for doing that, and now I'm going to bring Miss Wanda N. Walker to the table to tell us about the exciting work in Minneapolis. Wanda, the time is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you. What I'm going to talk about briefly today is share a little bit of overview work from the Ascend at the Aspen Institute about the 2Gen framework, a little bit about the Jeremiah program and the work that we've been doing for 18 years, and just recently, within the last couple of years, how we've tried to expand our 2Gen approach to working with fathers. So the Ascend at the Aspen Institute for the past 5 years has really started to focus and frame up 2-generation work, seeing the need that, as someone has already previously stated, that there have been many programs either working with children and moms, children and dads, but not working with the entire family. And so the Ascend approach is really just saying that we need to have policies and programs that address both the needs of children and their parents so that they can be successful together. Integrating the 2Gen lens is on this continuum, which I just mentioned, and what we're working toward is in the middle, being able to provide opportunities for and meet the needs of children and their parents together. There are core components when you think about 2Gen programming, and those are listed, social capital, looking at networks, friends, neighbors, and how the family can be supportive and be a support to others. Early childhood education, and I'd like to add the caveat, quality early childhood education, post-secondary and employment pathways, economic support, health and well-being. And as it was stated before, you may or may not offer all of those things under one roof, but in order to consider 2Gen programming, all of those components need to be provided to both the parent and the child. So Jeremiah program is a program that we have actually been working with moms and children since 1998. And while we did not call ourselves a 2Gen programming, that has always been our mission. We have, working with, as you see on the left side of the slide, a mother and her child, and we provide affordable, safe housing. We provide support for a career track college education, quality early childhood education, empowerment and life skills in a supportive community, which will lead the family to prosperity. So mothers come to Jeremiah program, and we have in Minneapolis 77 units, 38 in Minneapolis, and 39 units in St. Paul. They stay with us for 2.5 to 4.5 years while they work on their associate's degree or their bachelor's degree. On site, we have quality early childhood education centers. They are rated at the highest rating for the quality rating systems in the state of Minnesota. And we also have Empowerment, which is a 16-week course that the parents go through before coming into Jeremiah. It is based on cognitive restructuring and really does help prepare the moms to kind of do a mindset change in terms of how they think about their success and their child's success. We help them to begin to focus not just on me, but what do I need to do in order for my family to be successful. We also offer life skills. So once they get into the program, they are provided with weekly life skills classes as well as bi-weekly coaching services. They are also working and or volunteering in their field while they are in the program. In the early childhood development centers, we do assessments when the children enroll into the program in terms of their development. And then we provide twice a year assessments to kind of follow the track of the children. When we do evening programming with the life skills or empowerment classes, the children are also receiving services as well. So some of the families that we work with, they are living below the poverty level. They're dependent upon public assistance when they come in. 60 to 70% of our moms are women of color. 70 to 80% children of color. The average age of our mothers right now is 25, and the average age of children is under 3. We also have sites in Austin, Texas. We also are building a program in Fargo, Moorhead, North Dakota area, and we're running a non-residential pilot in Boston, Massachusetts right now, where we're serving 22 families. So the profile of our children are, the children can be as young as 6 weeks to 5 years of age. 5% of our children have been diagnosed with a special need. 60% have seen the abuse of drugs or alcohol in the home, and 30% have witnessed or experienced violence. And so when the families are in, we are working very closely with the Child Development Center staff as well as the Family Services team in a joint collaborative effort focusing on the entire family. When children come through, they get an individual plan as well, because our goal there is to have them ready for kindergarten as they progress through the program. Once the families get through our program, so 2 years, we give them a 6-month transition period. So after they receive the degree, whether it's 2 years or 4 years, they are allowed 6 months to begin to find another safe, affordable housing situation. Many of our parents leave their children in our Child Development Center once they graduate, if the kids are still under 5. But if not, finding a quality early elementary childhood education placement for their kids. Many of our moms are already working by the time they finish the program, but if not, that 6 months allows them time to find a job as well. Some of our statistics from last year are we had 70% of our graduates to complete with an associate's degree and 30% a bachelor's degree. The average wage at entry into the program was about $8.60, and upon graduation, it was $16. In the area of our children, all of our children, we had 86% who were ready for kindergarten, and in the ages and stages assessments that we do, 90% of our children scored above level in the areas of communication, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, problem solving, and personal and social skills. So we are really excited at Jeremiah about speaking about fathers, because we were not really engaging fathers prior to 2014 in a way that we felt was very meaningful. So we received a grant from the Annie Casey Foundation for $75,000, and the grant was really to look at what is our current state of involvement with the fathers. We did a literature review to see if there was any information out there that was referencing having father involvement in mothers programs. We surveyed our own mothers about the involvement as well as some things that they would like to see, and then we had the opportunity to also reach out to the fathers of the children who were enrolled in our program to kind of get some thoughts around their involvement. So a couple of things that we felt were very insightful were there was varying degrees of involvement, all the way from 0 to we had a father who actually spent about 39 hours per month with their little person. So, but both mothers and fathers felt like there was room for more that could be done. The greatest barrier, and research also validates this, is the mother-father relationship. So our parents recognized that it was their relationship that kind of kept that from being very helpful for the child, and then some opportunities for Jeremiah that we could do as well. We did work with several fatherhood programs, the Ajama Place, as well as the fatherhood program with the Goodwill Easter Seals. And we were able to develop a partnership with them where we are now doing referrals for some of the dads in our program to their programs, because one of the things our moms told us was, we're here getting a better education, we're learning parenting skills, and the fathers aren't doing anything. So they felt like the fathers needed to be working on themselves to better themselves for that relationship to be better. Some of the things from my experience in doing the research was when we focused on the mother or the child, people blew up. But the minute I talked about the research and the well-being of children, people softened. So focus on the child's well-being and not, necessarily the parents themselves. Expansion of our co-parenting skills. So that was one of the things that came out as well. In our life skills curriculum, we do offer co-parenting, and that was increased from 1 class to 2 classes. Improve the father-friendliness of the organization. So I am now in the process of doing an internal assessment of how friendly we think we are to fathers, and I will tell you we're not that friendly as an organization. What do I mean by that? The environment. Are we welcoming to fathers? I work in the evenings a lot, and I will tell you before I did this research, now fathers can come and visit. When I would leave my office at 9 o'clock at night, per se, and I would see a dad, my first inclination was, are you waiting till I leave so you can sneak inside? But after doing this father's research, it is a joy for me to now start to see fathers on this campus with their children, because I know how it's going to benefit that child. So we're actually looking at our environment. Right now the only pictures that you see up are Father Michael, who was our visionary founder, and St. Francis of Assisi. So it's like, what are we promoting in our organization? Our children need to see families, even if their fathers don't live here. Orientation is another idea that came out of our research. So when I was talking to dads and kind of asking them about their perception of Jeremiah program, I was stunned and alarmed that many of them did not know what Jeremiah program did and what benefits their children were receiving as a result of them being here. In the dad's mind, what they knew was as soon as my child went there, I could no longer go and visit them. And it was, we do have some safety rules and some things in place where there's a process for the dads to come visit. So we are now taking a look at some of our policies and procedures to see how we can make that happen a little more seamlessly for dads who are involved. And then the last one, which was really the easiest, the low-hanging fruit for us, was the child-centered and father-child events. So we are now working through our Child Development Center to offer more activities for fathers and children, which don't even really have to involve the mother if that relationship is not a good relationship, and that has also been very helpful. We are also working on developing a co-parenting class with the fatherhood programs that I mentioned previously, so that our moms can understand co-parenting and those dads can understand co-parenting without necessarily having the conflict of that personal relationship. So those are some of the things that we have found helpful in our work in terms of engaging fathers in the work that we're doing with mothers, but also in working with fatherhood programs who want to include moms. What we've done with the fatherhood programs is saying all the things that we're doing to engage dads, you guys need to be doing to engage moms. So some of those joint orientations, being able to have the dads to invite them, the moms, to certain events, or just to understand the process that each may be going through to better themselves, but keeping the focus on the child's well-being. And with that, I think I will hand it back over.
Well, thank you very much, Wanda. That was a fantastic way of setting the stage for this year. And I meant to say at the beginning that I really like your title, which is the Director of Program Excellence, for those of you who didn't notice that on the first slide. But I think it really does speak to the fact that your organization's obviously been doing excellent work, but now you're sort of really looking for the next frontier to increase the way you reach out to dads. So I think that's I think every program should have a director of program excellence.
Thank you. And if I can just add, I know this is not a webinar about evaluation. You got to think about how you're going to evaluate the outcomes for both mothers and children up front. And so that's another part of when you're developing your programs that you want to keep in mind as a before thought and not an afterthought.
That's a great point, yeah, because if we're going to be an intentional two-generation program, we've really got to be tracking outcomes for both generations, right? So, yeah. So thank you very much again, Wanda. So now let me move to our next speaker, who's Tony Judkins. He's the program manager for the John S. Martinez Fatherhood Initiative in Connecticut through the Department of Social Services. And, as with all the presenters, you can see his full bio by downloading it from the resource page there, but he's been involved in this fatherhood work for quite a while. And so, Tony, the time is yours. Tell us what you're doing there in Connecticut.
All right, great. Thank you, Nigel. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank OFA and the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse for the opportunity to share the multi-generational work that we're doing here in Connecticut that specifically targets fathers. 2015 was a banner year for us in Connecticut concerning our journey into multi-generational work, as two related actions took place here. First, the legislature passed a bill and approved $3 million in funding for a two-gen initiative that includes pilot programs in 6 communities across Connecticut. It's believed to be the first such effort in the nation. Secondly, Connecticut was selected as one of 7 national sites to receive technical support and consultation from the Office of Family Assistance Systems to Family Stability National Policy Academy, which we fondly call here in Connecticut as the Connecticut TANF Academy. This is an 18-month project that exposes us to emerging and relevant research and best practices, but it also assigns us a tandem of 2 coaches to help guide our work and help keep our project moving forward. So here are the components of our state's multi-generational initiative for families. It delivers academic and job readiness support services across 2 generations. It builds a learning community of the pilot sites to share strategies across urban, rural, suburban, and regional targets. It takes into account all learnings to develop the statewide blueprint for both school and workforce success. And it creates 6 pilots which focus on all the things that families tell us they need: early learning programs, adult education, child care, housing, job training, transportation, financial literacy, and other related support services. We're also looking to create a long-term blueprint for a multi-generational model with TANF funds. It includes a plan for state grant incentives for private entities that develop multi-generational programming. It creates a workforce liaison to gauge and coordinate the needs of employers and households in each of our pilot communities. Our initiative will have an evaluation that looks at outcomes in children, parent, family, and systems. We think that this approach really helps us build strategic partnerships with philanthropy, businesses, academia, elected officials, and parents. So I'm going to shift from our 2-gen work over to the Connecticut TANF Academy project. This slide identifies the partners named in our application. We've since added our State Office of Early Childhood and others since we began our project. As you can see, the selection of these particular partners was very intentional, and it demonstrates the true spirit of multi-generational legislation as well as access points for services. It's a no wrong door approach. But more importantly for families, it demonstrates a collaboration among 3 government branches and a proactive statewide nonprofit entity to effect a systems change approach to this work. The methodology is intended to be a coordinated system of services approach that provides a holistic assessment of the needs of the entire family to better provide a cohesive continuum of services that supports both parents, which in turn can lead to better outcomes for children. So this slide represents our vision for our TANF Academy. Connecticut government programs have historically ignored the needs and the strengths of non-custodial parents when developing service plans for TANF participants and their families. As a result, non-custodial parents have not received services, and their potential contributions to the family have not been acknowledged and or accessed for the family. If we focus more on the comprehensive strength-based family assessment, including the value of social capital, and create common values and data elements addressing whole families across agencies and programs, and embrace the vision above, then we want to implement a multi-system collaborative with a holistic family approach for non-custodial parents, families, and their children. Right now, we're in the beginning stages of a pilot program here with the intent to kind of work out all the kinks right now and then take this to scale across our state. So as we begin to look at multi-generational and fatherhood approaches to this work, we need to recognize that they are a lens not just specific to programming. So if we do mindful work from this wider lens, then it will cross into all systems and policies and programs aimed to support and serve families. It's a better way to look at the complete picture of the family that transcends the household walls. We also have to be cognizant of the language we use in these matters. While not necessarily intentional, if we use gender-neutral language like parent and family with the requirement that a parent and a family are in one household, we are leaving out a potential valuable resource and support for the children and the custodial parent in that household. The TANF Academy collaboration with the 2Gen supported a recent amendment to our legislation. The language now includes the term non-custodial parents to recognize these parents are as important as those parents in the primary household, and they should be included in our multi-generational policy efforts. As a side note, our TANF Academy pilot has informally been adopted as the 7th pilot site in our 2Gen initiative work here in Connecticut. I recently, I think I explained before that there were 6 communities across the state that were approved for the 2Gen work, and 2 of those 6 plans include or target non-custodial parents, which is great. So as we look at the challenges in this work, we have to get out of our comfort zones and begin embracing the uncomfortable. By breaking down our silos and traditional approaches to the work and serving the whole family to truly make a difference for families moving forward. We know that traditional social services and 2Gen efforts target custodial parents, primarily mom and their children. Non-custodial parents, which are primarily dads, not always are able to access program supports since they don't have the children living with them. Staff who are serving the custodial parent and the child may not be asking questions or obtaining information to help them reach out to the non-custodial parent or the dad. Sometimes staff that are serving men in programs other than fatherhood may not be asking these men if they're fathers. They just see him as an individual. Fatherhood program staff may not be thinking about engaging moms and children directly in the work that they're doing with dads, but working with the whole family requires this transparency. We have to change our mindset and approach this work from a very holistic lens. So to address these challenges, we've partnered with one of our 11 DSS certified fatherhood programs called New Opportunities to operate the pilot. Now, it's no mistake that they were chosen to implement the pilot as they are a community action agency, or CAA. Connecticut CAAs have a 40-year history as the federally designated anti-poverty agency. CAAs are locally based and well-known in their communities. They serve a diverse base of clients of all ages and backgrounds with a wide range of service needs. People served by the community action agencies include anyone from infants to elders, the unemployed to the employed, in-school youth to out-of-school youth. So as you can see from the listing of services above, it's one-stop shopping, and it's clearly screaming there's a place here to implement some multi-generational approaches to service delivery. We aim for the provision of holistic and seamless support focused on families, not funders, linking services and systems, and ensuring that all family structures are recognized and that they all are supported. We recently facilitated a planning session with New Opportunities and their staff to gain their input and buy-in as we begin to design and implement the pilot that aligns with the TANF Academy project and the 2Gen initiative goals here in Connecticut. So when we're thinking about fatherhood programs who are looking to do more around incorporating 2Gen efforts, one of the things I would see is that we really need to really examine the family as a single unit or a whole unit. We need to address learning, work, and family strengths. We need to create a no wrong door approach that is open to both parents and their children. And we really need to start to foster a shifting culture in our programs and do more around cross-program coordination and integration, which really translates into we just need to do a better job of communicating internally in our offices. So the goal of the Connecticut's TANF Academy pilot is really the true inclusion of non-custodial parents, fathers in all policies and procedures and service provision. The goal is supported through a 2Gen approach, whether or not they live with their children. So we are very clear here in Connecticut that fatherhood is in everything that we do. And when we're talking about children and families, if we're not thinking about their dads, then we're doing that child a disservice. If we truly want the best outcomes for children and families, we have a responsibility to provide these supports for both of their parents. I guess I can turn it back over to Nigel if there's any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. Yeah, we've been collecting a few questions, so we'll circle back with those at the end. And again, I'll remind you, if you do have any questions for any of the speakers or a general question, just put your question there in that Ask a Question box. I did just want to underline one of the things that Tony said about, that their whole approach is to make services more accessible for families and sort of think about things from the perspective of families. And I think that is another, real key point of 2-generation work. And, as Wanda said, I think a lot of programs are probably doing these kind of things and not necessarily calling it 2Gen, but certainly sort of helps us to frame and think about the importance of this. So before we move to our final set of speakers, we're going to give you the second poll question here just to get a bit more information from you. And here we're just interested in, to the extent that your agency is actually doing any work with children and parents. So you can either say, yes, we're working directly at our agency to provide outcome-focused services for fathers and their children, or yes, we're working with community partners to provide those kind of outcome-focused services for fathers and their children. Or yes, you're primarily working with mothers and children. Or perhaps you just have occasional events for fathers and their children, but have not yet begun to provide outcome-focused 2Gen. Or maybe you're just still thinking about it. So I'll just give you another few seconds to respond to that. And it's certainly good to see that the answer that's top here is certainly the first one. So encouraging to know that there are a lot of you out there who are already doing this focused 2Gen work, and certainly invite you to email us with information on what you are doing that we could share with others. So again, thank you very much. And I'll now move to introduce Corinne Cadet, who is the 2-generation coordinator for the Center for Working Families in Atlanta, Georgia, and Rodney Lawrence, who's with their partner agency as a family support specialist with the Supporting Arms Child Care Center in Atlanta. And so they're going to tell you a little bit about their partnership and how they're getting this 2Gen work done with the fathers and the children. So take it away, please, Corinne.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for the opportunity for us to share a little bit about what we're doing here in Atlanta. I'm Corinne Cadet, as Nigel mentioned, the 2-generation coordinator for the Center for Working Families, which happens to be a workforce development company. And with me is one of our staff members and partners, Mr. Rodney Lawrence.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So what I'll do is I'll outline a little bit about what our agency does in terms of workforce development and how we try to incorporate certain programs where fathers are involved, and also talk about the different concepts and goals framework for our 2-generation work here. And then Rodney's going to really talk about a lot of the fatherhood initiatives that's happening on his campus. And as Nigel mentioned, our agency is housed in a complex where our facility, and the early learning facility, as well as an elementary school, are all part of one campus. And so with that campus alignment, we've really been able to work together as agencies to support the families in our communities. So if you're looking at your screen, the picture that you see is actually the EduCare site with the elementary school behind it, and then to the right of that picture would be where we're housed. So the Center for Working Families, we believe that we have the opportunity to help families advance their economic success while providing workforce development, economic support, and asset building services. We do believe that every family as an individual is able to improve their lives through economic and career success. So our programs here are primarily focused on that. We have what's called the Economic Success Continuum, and that's where our bundle services are housed for our families. It's our educational aspirations. We are able to provide support, coaching services to our families. We try to make sure that we incorporate, whether families are trying to manage their income and expenses, acquiring different skill sets. And what we've seen is that the families that we serve have several barriers. First, starting off with literacy, where oftentimes 75% of the families that we serve have some kind of literacy barrier. So with that, we provide our GED program as an initiative to support those families with literacy issues, and if they want to advance their careers or their educational aspirations, we connect them to different technical colleges and different programs that are available in Georgia for them to continue that as well. The other thing that we saw is that we had families that had child care barriers, which is why we're able to provide a subsidy to our families so that they can work or go to school while their child is being supported at Sheltering Arms. Transportation is another barrier that families have had, as well as criminal background. And Rodney will speak a little bit to how we try to help our families, especially our fathers, with criminal history, because what we've seen is that oftentimes being able to get employed or stay employed is harder to do when you have a criminal background. And I don't know if Rodney wants to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, a lot of our fathers, they deal with, well, families with mothers and the fathers deal with criminal background issues. So at the center up to like 2016, they had Lee Evans was a legal advocate for the center. So anything that came up with some legal problems or questions, they were able to set an appointment with Mr. Evans. And also this year, Austin Bird adopted the Dunbar Center, and that's a law firm that's here big in Atlanta. And they do a lot of pro bono work with parents that have some issues. And we have one other agency that we do is the Health Law Partnership. So that's anybody that's connected with Dunbar Elementary School, Sheltering Arms, and the Center Working Family. They will work with those parents when it comes to legal issues.
And we have a staff here that's also working with the Georgia Justice Project, and they also provide advocacy to our fathers as well as our mothers who have legal issues that may need advice about, especially if they've just come out of prison and they're trying to get IDs or they're trying to work out payment arrangements for child support. So that Georgia Justice Project provides support for those families as well. Because one of the things we've seen in some of the employment opportunities is that anyone with a criminal background cannot get employed. So our agency has partnered up with Construction Ready to create a program where, despite some of the legal issues that a father may encounter, they're able to actually get employed. And so we had our first cohort graduate about a month ago, and we had about 12 people in that class. 3 of them were women, the majority of them were men, and they started off with construction jobs, starting off at about $12. So they were able to go through that program. It's a 4-week course where they received free education, and we consider that one of our hard skills course because they actually got on-the-job training and support for them to actually be employed at the construction program. And especially here in Atlanta, construction is definitely on the rise with not only the buildings and the businesses, but we also have a new stadium that's being built. And so being able to provide those jobs to our dads to be able to support their families, I think is a big part in helping them understand the legal roadmap helps for them to continue their economic advantages as well. So we'll continue. Some of the other things with Sheltering Arms, they provide the child care. So I'll let Rodney explain a little bit about that agency before we go into more of the bundle services that we offer our families.
Okay, Sheltering Arms have like 4 divisions of child care. They have early Head Starts, which is from birth to all the way up to turning to 3 years old. They have Head Start that covers 3 and 4. And we have Georgia Pre-K, which is our state lottery funded program. And so with Georgia Pre-K, you don't have to meet any income requirements, but the early Head Start and Head Start, you have to meet the poverty guidelines to qualify for the program. And the majority of our parents, they are single mothers, but we fall in the low poverty income level. And then we have a small percentage of income regular tuition parents that attend our program. And so what ends up happening for the funding that takes care of that, for the parent that participates with the Center Working Family, if they need after-school care, the Center Working Family provides that subsidy. And if it's the one that may not qualify for a Head Start, they pay for the full tuition. And so we pretty much year-round. So when school is out, we're year-round. And we cover from 6:30 in the morning from 6:30 p.m. And only days we are pretty much off is those major holidays. So we're pretty much, we're open.
And so what Rodney just mentioned in terms of how we partner up is based on our 2-generation framework. So when we look at families that are associated both with the Center for Working Families and Sheltering Arms, we have a bundle of services, starting off with workforce development, the job readiness boot camp that's offered to anybody who's currently unemployed, and that's a 4-week program that's offered in the mornings here at our facility. And so families, parents have the opportunity to come to those workshops and gain some soft skills development, resume writing, dress for success, different skill sets so that they can apply for jobs, as well as the support of staff while they're going through that track. As I mentioned earlier, we have our hard skills programs like our Construction Ready program. We have a customer service training opportunity where families go through that program, and we're connecting them with actual jobs. The other service that they receive through our 2-generation framework is our health navigator and mental health services. So oftentimes we see that, especially if dad is not in the home or there's been some issues in the home, that additional support is needed, especially on the mental health piece. So we're trying to connect families to mental health providers that would be able to provide counseling, not only for the children, but for the adults as well. We offer what's called a bundle meeting. And during that bundle meeting, the coach, which would be from the Center for Working Families, as well as the staff from Family Support, the staff from Sheltering Arms, which is the family support staff, will come together with that family to talk about the goals that they set for the year. And what we do is we look at what's called our bridge. There's different pillars on the bridge that identify economics, mental health and well-being, education, any debts, any incomes, as well as a component for the child. So when we look at how that family perceives their situation, they can set goals for the different areas on that pillar. So between the 2 agencies, we look at how we're going to support and coach that family to economic success. It's not about managing them as a case, but it's about empowering them to make the decisions for their lives and, connecting them with the right resources in our community so that they can continue to do that. So those bundle meetings where we come together is when we discuss the family issues, we discuss the goals, and try to work towards moving them upwards on the bridge. And I don't know if Rodney wanted to mention anything about the bundle meetings, okay? Also, our staff provides home visits to our families, and that's more so on the Sheltering Arms side. So any information that we receive during home visits, we as a team between our two agencies can kind of come together and really work with those families. As I mentioned earlier, the bundle services, it's about helping the families, make SMART goals. It's about helping them achieve their goals, but it's also about holding the families accountable. And so with the partnership that we have between our agencies, if, the family support sees them more often because they're dropping off their child in the morning or picking them up, we can kind of get information from that family support specialist to figure out what our coaching sessions are going to look like. And we try to, work together as closely as possible so that we can make sure that those families are supported. So we'll move on to some of the supportive services, primarily the parent capacity building and social capital programs, because we've mentioned the other areas like the child care subsidy that we provide, the family coaching and advocacy. But Rodney's going to really talk in depth about the Fatherhood initiative that they're offering over at Sheltering Arms.
Okay, with the Fatherhood initiative, one main thing is to get them engaged and get them involved. So we try to tell the fathers how important they are because they don't realize the importance of being a father. And one of the programs that we use is called All Pro Dad. It's a sponsored program. The program, a face person of the program is Tony Dungy, and pretty much people know what Tony Dungy's values are. And it's 10 ways to be an all-pro dad, and it's 10 topics that we cover during the school year. 1 is love your wife/mate. 2, spend time with your kids. 3, be a role model. 4, understand and enjoy your children. 5, show affection. 6, secure your family financial future. 7, eat together as family. 8, discipline with a gentle spirit. 9, pray and worship together. And 10, realize you're a father forever. So in those topics, we meet at least an hour out of each month, and with those things, it's a big support group because a lot of fathers, they don't feel like they have anybody they can go to, and when our meetings, we found out a lot of stuff we go through the same thing. So it might be something somebody have already experienced that another father can learn to, and it's just not for fathers too. It's for uncles, anybody that's that positive male in that child's life. Because we have a lot of fathers, but we've really found out is a lot of kids might not know who their fathers are. Fathers incarcerated and their father had been killed. And so we talk about those things, and we have a meeting on that. And so this is National Fatherhood Program, and we have another one that we deal with. It's called Watchdogs, and it stands for Dads of Great Students. And that's used more primarily in the elementary school level. And their thing is as far as volunteering. And volunteering they do is the school sets some things that fathers can volunteer for, and so the fathers pick out a day out of the month that they can volunteer. So when they pick that day, that's their duties that they can do. So it's something this is not a mandated program. These are volunteer programs. So it's just by keeping your word and continue on what you promise you're going to do. And outside of that fatherhood program, we do other things as far as we do sporting events, museums, school events. We have one that's set up coming up in August, calling it Back to School, where we're doing the father and child event, whether it's boy or girl, and we are going to the Falcons preseason game. And then we have one set up for September 2nd for the Georgia State football game. And that might not sound, all that big, but what it is exposure, because a lot of our families, they're not exposed to things. They're used to probably being in our school, going up and down the street, but we don't live too far from the Georgia Dome and Phillips Arena, and a lot of parents or kids have been experienced that. So my thing is we try to push the educational mode for just in books, but we try to get them exposed to being outside of their area. And so those are one of the bigger things that we're trying to do. And as the picture you might see, those pictures that you see was a father-daughter dance. We had one that was in the background of that was in the school, and that was done at the Educare Center right there. And we had one that was done with the going to Pascal, which is a historic restaurant, and that was done. It was done with the older school-age kids. So we had 2 events, and we had a good turnout and stuff. And so with that, you sometimes do a lot of fun events. You're able to do surveys, and you can capture a lot of information from dads through fun events instead of just enroll them in school and stuff. So with that, they feel comfortable. We have some male staff at our center they bond with, and a lot of times, just through word of mouth, they invite other fathers, and that's how we build on our program. And with that, our building capacity with them, they feel comfortable with us, so then we are able to spread out to some of our partners, and they feel comfortable for getting involved with other things, just with the center worker family, with the school, as well as doing things with their kids and getting more involved as being fathers and building a relationship with their mates. So with that, that's how we all do our, building capacity with our fathers.
So that's pretty much our presentation. As I mentioned earlier, our two-generation framework between the two agencies has worked well the last couple of years. It is sometimes often difficult to
Are you still there, Corinne? Did you put yourself on mute?
Her line actually disconnected.
Oh, wow. I did hear a phone ring, yeah. She maybe got a bit panicked there. Okay, yeah. Well, we'll come back to that. We do have a few follow-up questions for Corinne and Rodney. That they were actually on the same line, so it means we've lost Rodney as well. So we've had a few questions come in, so let me ask those and certainly encourage you to send in more questions. Wanda, if I could circle back to you, I've got a few, I think, fairly short answer questions here. There was one question asking, you had mentioned that 30% of the children had experienced violence. Was that violence within the family or was that community violence?
It is a combination of both. In our assessment, we're asking the moms about their experience with violence, and so it's a combination of both. Okay,
thanks. And then there was a question for you about whether or not you're using any curricula with the fathers, or is that just something that the partners are doing?
We are actually going to co-develop a co-parenting curriculum. Right now, we're using resources from the Clearinghouse, the Father's Clearinghouse right now.
Oh, okay. Very good. It's good to know. Yeah.
Sorry, we got disconnected, but that was pretty much the end of our presentation as it relates to our two-generation program.
Okay, no problem, Corinne. Yeah, so I actually just started asking a few questions of Wanda, and well, actually, now that you're back, let me just ask a couple more questions for you then, and then I'll circle back to Wanda again. I've got a couple more questions for Wanda, Wanda, and then a couple of questions for Tony, and then some general questions for all of you. So let me see here. That there was one question that came in for you, Corinne, about the ethnic and racial breakdown of your program. Is that something that you have any stats on?
Yes. I would say 95% of the families we serve are economically disadvantaged, as well as African American. Because of the nature of our location, we're on the southwest side of Atlanta, and that's heavily populated with our African American individuals. So that's the general makeup of our families.
Okay, great, thanks. I think could you just say a little bit more about how you actually formed the partnership with the Sheltering Arms? What was sort of the catalyst for that, and any advice you can offer for others as you form these kind of partnerships?
Okay. The Center for Working Families has been in existence since 2005, I believe, providing workforce development in this community. The elementary school that we're directly connected to has also been in existence way before that. And then Educare.
Yeah. Sheltering Arms has been in existence since 1888. The Educare Center was formed in 2010. And pretty much the Annie Casey Foundation brought us together. They wanted somebody that was experienced in the early childhood, so that's how Sheltering Arms was brought together.
And then so when Annie Casey connected with Sheltering Arms, since we're pretty much very close in terms of proximity, and we have been actually providing some of the child care services prior to the actual formation, I guess, the two-generation framework, Sheltering Arms brought on the Center for Working Families to meet with Annie Casey, and then the two-generation family, I guess you want to say, was created. And so we've been partnered under the two-generation umbrella for about 3 to 4 years now doing that specific work. But in terms of providing the same services, I think we've been doing it for a while. It's just the umbrella of Annie Casey kind of brought us all together.
And one of the things that brought us together on Annie Casey, in this area right here, it had the highest teen dropout and the highest teen pregnancy rate. And so their concept was if we put high education and money back into the community, those kids will learn just like any other kids if they have the resources, and especially with the families as well. And from what standing, it seems like it's working and stuff. So that's how we came together.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Yeah. So, Fonda, if I can just circle back to you, I do have a couple more questions. And so one question, just wanted to clarify, is the Jeremiah program only for mums, and can you work with guardians as well?
It is only for moms and their children.
Okay.
Moms have to have custody of their children.
Okay. So that's the biological mother, or could you have...
Yes, the biological mother.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And finally for you, Wanda, in terms of the way that you determine your outcomes, could you say a little bit about the type of indicators that you use for the parent and child outcomes?
Mm-hmm. For our mothers, we are looking at their income and work activities and where they land up, the degree. We also look at their life skills progression and the skills that they have, because we have alumni services and we do an alumni evaluation every year for up to 5 years. The parents who do well are the ones who can, they have gained those supportive skills, that community support. We also look at progression of skills, responsibilities, and increase in income when they are out of the program, so up to 5 years. And for the children, we look at kindergarten readiness, we look at third grade test scores and how they are progressing in school as well, and then emotionally, socially, cognitively as they are going through the program.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah.
Well,
so Tony, let me come to you. I've got just a couple of questions that came in specifically for you. The first one was asking about if you do any work and how you do that with any fathers who may be resistant to joining. And do you provide any incentives for dads to come into the program?
Well, one incentive that we have is if for dads who get involved in our fatherhood programs, if they have any issues with child support, if they have an arrearage, once they complete programming in the fatherhood programs, once they can graduate the program, they are eligible for our arrearage adjustment program, where they can get the state-owed arrearage that is due to the state, not the family, reduced if they are involved in the program. And it's a continual adjustment the longer they stay connected to us.
So let me also sort of ask, and I'm not quite sure if the person typed resistant or resident fathers, because I know you said that the focus is with non-custodial. So what if the dad's in the home? Do you?
Right. Our programming is for all dads. All
okay.
Dads are welcome in our programming.
Okay. And so in terms of the community action agency, that's in your 2-gen sort of demo piece. So they're connecting with children, mothers, and fathers, all in sort of under separate silos, really, right? And don't necessarily connect all those dots. So that's one of the things the project is really working on.
Absolutely, and we find it here in our agency. I've sat across from folks for 20 years, and we all do our thing because everybody's concentrating on what they do, and everyone's good at what they do, but we don't talk enough about the program and how our programs can help each other. We're all, the common goal for us is really self-sufficiency for the family, and if we talk more about what we're doing and how we can kind of interact with each other, we will have better outcomes for children, and we'll be more informed about the work that each of us is doing in the agency. And that is one of the tenets of the work that we're doing, and really trying to make sure that internally as well as externally. Everyone knows what's going on, who's in the community, who wants to be a partner, who can provide what services to these families.
Okay, thanks. And then finally for you, Tony, could you just briefly say again what the LEAP program is that you mentioned?
Which program?
The LEAP program, L-E-A-P. Did you mention that?
Oh, that is the LEAP program. No, I did not mention the LEAP program, but I think it may have been LIHEAP, which is an energy assistance program.
Okay, yeah. Maybe it was on one of your slides, because that was a question from somebody. So, now the next question is a general question for everybody, and it's just really asking about the ages of the children, because most of what we've been talking about, and I suppose this is the emphasis of most 2-gen work, right? But it's been talking about younger children, really sort of under 5, in terms of really trying to provide those supports during those early childhood years, because obviously we know they're so crucial for brain development and just sort of the kind of future the kids can look forward to. We can really sort of plant a good base there. But are any of the programs that any of you are working with, are there any services for school-aged or adolescent children?
This is Wanda. Our program primarily focuses on 6 weeks to or birth to 5 years. However, if parents are in the program and let's say they enter the program, they have a 3-year-old and they're working on a BA, then that kid is going to be, 7 and a half. So we are slowly beginning to focus some of the services in the evenings. We do have older programming for those children, but those kids are usually going off campus to school and doing after-school activities and then coming back on campus.
Okay. Has anybody else got any connections in the community with those kind of services for the older kids?
Yes, we, again, with our Fatherhood program, we go all the way up to the 5th grade. Now, just with the early development part is just at our center at the Shelter North Educare Center. But as far as the connection with resources and with the Center Work Family, we carry on past that age. And then when things come in, resources come in that we have, that's for the older kids. We work with that with the elementary school, so we still are connected, and we move on, because even the data that's kept is kept from birth all the way up to the 5th grade.
Okay. And while we've got you, Rodney, there was one quick question for you. Somebody was asking about the All Pro Dads curriculum and how they get that. I believe you go to the website, right? Is it just allprodads.com or is it .org?
.com.
Okay, so it's just allprodads.org.
All Pro
right?
Dad without the S. Allprodad.com.
Okay, no S. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Let me see here. What else have we got? Oh, there was a follow-up question for you, Wanda, in terms of how you measure the life skills. Have you got a standardized assessment tool that you use for that?
That is correct. We have what we call an individual development assessment, which is a self-reported assessment that the moms take before they start the 16-week empowerment course, and then it is administered annually. We use that tool to direct the life skills classes. So we look at the aggregate data and plan for the life skills classes, which we offer 26 weeks of life skills annually. And then that's also used in coaching to help the moms to develop their goals while they're in the program.
Okay. Let me see. I have a couple more questions here. I think this one must be for either Corinne or Rodney. It says, what agencies provide the child care subsidy? Is it Workforce Solutions?
No, the Center for Working Families, we're the ones who, we receive state funding, and with that we administer the subsidy. So we have an application process, we have a review process. Oftentimes it's referrals from Sheltering Arms. Families will go there directly for child care, and then they're referred to us. And so if they meet our different criteria, which is residency, income, as well as active status with our agency, then we can possibly allocate the child care subsidy for that child. And their child also has to be within a certain age range for us to be able to pay for that subsidy.
Great. Okay, thanks. And I see actually that we've just added the link to the All Pro Dad site for anyone who wants to click on that. Now this is a question for everybody. Do any of you offer any training for individuals who would like to implement or learn how to bring such great information to their own communities? Anyone thought about that?
Well, we only do it through expansion for cities who are interested in bringing a Jeremiah program. However, we are interested in starting to do some consulting work, so it could be workable.
Okay, yeah. I'd say probably generally if you want to reach out to any of the speakers, I'm sure they'll be able to share their experience. Tony, what do you do sort of within the state? Do you talk about 2Gen stuff with other people there?
Absolutely. For us, is really we're really trying to be intentional because we try to involve all the systems that are in these families' lives. We try to get them all connected at the state level, so it's a cohesive continuum of services for these families. So they're not, filling out another application when they go to, DCF, or they're not filling out a different application when they're going to, this other state office. So we're really trying to stay connected and making sure we're all on the same page when it comes to working with these families.
Great. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
And Nigel, this is Lisa. We can add different organizations to our resource list when we send out the slides of national organizations who are working with the 2Gen subject matter, such as ASCEND and Casey and other foundations and other national experts. So we can include that information as well.
Okay, absolutely, and that is in the resources list actually that everybody can download. We've got links to the Annie E. Casey Foundation that they have a lot of resources on 2Gen, and to the Ascended Aspen that Lisa mentioned, and we've flagged a few resources from Ascend. That there's one where they talk about fathers but they talk specifically about fathers. So yeah, we'll certainly do that. But yeah, I certainly encourage you to have a look at those resources and just sort of, there's a lot you can sort of delve through. But yeah, there is stuff out there. Yeah. Now we have another question about social media, which is certainly one that we hear a lot in terms of general working with dads. Are any of the programs using social media to outreach to dads or to keep them engaged when you're working with them? Using Facebook or Twitter or anything else?
Well, our general information is available through our website. I believe our agency uses Twitter. So anytime we have activities, we try to get that information out there for families to kind of know what's going on. And we have a text blast system that we use, and Shelter in Arms uses different forms of communication to their families whenever there's activities going on campus.
Right. For us here in Connecticut, we use our state website, but what works best for our programs is word of mouth. A lot of this information, when guys are going to programming and they're getting help that feels like help, they tell everybody in their neighborhood they're getting help, and everybody comes after that. So it's really word of mouth. We spent a lot of money on advertising in the past, and when we have our annual meetings with the program sites and the participants, we ask them about the program and what can we do. They used to say when we first started, we need billboards and we need this and that. They don't need that anymore because everybody knows what the program is about. So it's really word of mouth and building that trust in the community.
Yeah, that's interesting, Tony. Yeah, I mean, you hear that so often from programs, I think, as you get more successful, that is the way you do it.
Right.
One of the things I always say is, that I think your best recruitment tool is quality services that really engage dads and meet their needs, right? Because then they'll, not only do they change their lives, which people see and want to learn a bit more about how that's happened, right? But they also, share stories.
Absolutely.
Now, another question which I talk about a lot as well, actually, somebody said in terms of being intentional with language, what language can be used for fathers to outreach to, rather than non-custodial? The person's saying that seems a bit academic, and certainly for myself, I always like to say non-residential. I think when we're saying non-custodial, as the question points out, we're talking there about a thing, an object, right? A child's not an object. So anybody else got any sort of insights on language that you might use rather than non-custodial, or just in general when you're trying to engage a dad, or in any kind of language things to avoid?
This is Wanda. One of the things one of the words that I dislike is single mom, single parent, because a child has two parents.
Right.
So one of the things that we say here in my program and that I push is primary parent, and then we use co-parent a lot. And that was a foreign term to the moms, but once we actually started to have that be a part of our program vocabulary, then they picked up on it and they really embraced that term, because if they're really trying to do it together, they're both parents.
Mm-hmm.
I second that. That is very spot on.
Yeah. Rodney or Corinne, any thoughts on the language piece?
Yeah, I think just referring to them as parents makes a difference. For our agency, we often say participant, which doesn't delineate whether or not they're male or female. It's just the person that we're engaged with. So I think just having that, gender neutral term as an agency helps the family feel as if you're not taking sides.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really like Wanda's point about the the primary parent and co-parents too, because just recognizing that every child's got two parents, and if both parents are still alive anyway, there's still two parents out there, so they are involved in that child's life, even if they're not physically or emotionally involved at the moment. There's still a factor in that child's life, right? The child thinks about them, so.
Yeah, well, I think, Nigel, when I'm in a room with folks, we're talking about families and children, and we're talking about all these different dynamics, the first thing I ask is, because I know when folks are going through our systems and we say family, but what does that really mean? A lot of times family doesn't include that. It said family is mom and the children. So we have to be really intentional about when we ask these questions, what does it really mean, and kind of give a definition towards it.
Yeah, and perhaps have a look at what it actually means for that child, right? Who are the adults involved in that child's life?
Absolutely.
Perhaps, yeah.
Hey, Nigel, it's Wanda. If I can just share something else too. When I was doing my research, we asked the moms how important they thought it was for a biological dad to be involved in their children's lives. And while most of them thought that was important, 90% of our moms also thought that there could be a suitable substitute, which alarmed me, like a mentor or a positive. And I was like, oh my gosh, because there is research that says that's great, but there is research that talks about that biological dad. And so that's why we are working very hard to have moms to understand the importance of it being that child's biological father involved if it is at all possible, and to make that relationship amicable for the well-being of the child.
Absolutely, yeah. I have one general question for all of you, and then there's a couple other questions that have come in, but I'd like each of you just to respond briefly to, offer some advice for fatherhood programs that maybe aren't connected to any services for children at the moment. Maybe they have an occasional father-child event, but have you got any advice for how they might sort of do something a bit more intentional about providing services to the children as well as the fathers? It's easier, I think, if you're starting from the perspective of working with children to reach out to dads, or even working with mothers to reach out to dads. But if your primary audience at the moment is dads, any advice for how you start accessing services for the kids of those fathers?
This is Wanda. I will just say I think it is in your assessment process, and I think Tony said it, really engaging fathers and having that conversation around family the children, the status of that relationship, and starting that educational process, and then being able to advocate or be a bridge to other services. And I think it's important that, if at all possible and as soon as possible, being able to engage with the child as well, or somehow to be able to observe those interactions and provide the resources necessary.
Yeah, that's a great point, just to be able to observe the interactions. I found one of the things that, is an eye-opener for some dads, if you do it, just have a father-child event, just to see dads observing each other with their kids and saying, oh, yeah, look how he's talking to his kid, that's not the way I do it, those kind of things,
Right.
Right, yeah, and I was going to mention that too, that with our fatherhood programs, they do have events around the children and the parents, where it could be a fishing derby. They check out the parent and see what they're doing, because what they're doing is we have a father curriculum that we use called 24/7 Dads, and it's a curriculum where you take the information you learn and you apply it to your family and your children, and so they try to coincide that with an event, and they kind of look at whatever they did the week before, see how the family or the father interacts with his child and how he kind of handles himself around the child. They also talk about pieces around discipline and how to discipline your child. So, it's a learning environment for fathers, and it's a learning environment for children as well.
Okay. So, Rodney or Corinne, any thoughts on any advice for sort of a general fatherhood program, how they might start forming a partnership like yours, how they might reach out to a childcare center, say, and what they might say to them? Are you on mute again?
Looks like their line disconnected again.
Yeah.
Oh, we lost them again. Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, I would add to that, Nigel. I would just encourage folks to go out in the community and really do a community scan of folks in their community who have similar missions and would want to work together and partner, and go in and kind of give them, do an open house or give them a presentation on the things that your program does and how you want to engage with children and families.
Okay.
And I will also add, I've worked in the community action field for over 13 years previously. Every community action agency that's funded through Community Services Block Grant funds have to do a community needs assessment every 2 years. I would tap into that data and see what the needs of the community are, and then begin to link through that community action agency in your community.
Oh, that's a great point, Wanda. Yeah. So if there's a community action agency in your community, get to know them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So there was one follow-up question for you, Wanda. I don't think I asked you this one. When you were talking about the assessment tool for the life skills, somebody asked, is that available publicly, or is that one that you developed internally?
It is not available publicly. It's one that I developed specifically for the Jeremiah program.
Okay. And then there was a general data question for everybody, just in terms of the tools that are being used to aggregate data for your program. How do you sort of aggregate the intake information, like the demographics and entrance surveys, exit surveys, that kind of thing? Is there a particular, I guess it's a management information system, that kind of thing, that you use to aggregate your data? Anybody got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we use Apricot for our client management system. I also use IBM SPSS, which is statistical analysis software as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to use a in-house built data system for our fatherhood program assessments.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks. Yeah. So let's go to our evaluation. Give folk just a chance to give us the overall evaluation. If you just respond quickly to the questions you see on your screen. This is how we collect our outcome data. So, and after we finish this, I'll give each of the presenters, and hopefully Rodney and Corinne can rejoin, but I'll give each of you just a chance for a final word, any key takeaway that you'd like to leave people with. And the same for you, Damon, as well, if you want to say any words before we end it. I'll just give you all a chance to respond to these 3 questions. So, the first one is saying, whether or not you strongly agree down to strongly disagree with the statement. The webinar increased my knowledge about two-generation approaches and ways to integrate this knowledge into program policies, procedures, and practices. And then secondly, responding to the question the presenters effectively communicated their expertise. You can strongly agree on down. And then in general, did you receive good information and resources that you can use? And if there are other resources that you know of that have not been mentioned or you'd like us to talk about, again, email us at info@fatherhood.gov. If you've got any thoughts on what you'd like to hear us talking about in the next webinar, do let us know. We haven't actually scheduled the topic for the next one yet, so it is open. So if you've got anything you'd like to hear about, let us know at info@fatherhood.gov. Okay, it looks like everyone's finished responding, so thank you very much for that. And let's see here, we should now have a contact slide coming up. Yeah, so here you can see everybody's contact information, so if you do want to follow up with any of the presenters, and again, there's info@fatherhood.gov. I encourage you to get in touch with us. So let me give everybody a chance just for one final thought. So Wanda, what pearl of wisdom would you like to leave people with?
I would say be intentional. Moms are willing. I think it's just that educational piece in terms of how important it is. And it's not about them. It's not about that relationship specifically if they're not together, but it is about the well-being of the children. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Tony?
I was going to say that, Wanda. Thank you. but I would change it up. I will say that dads are always willing to participate. We just don't always bring them to the table. And so be intentional around inviting men to the table when it comes to their children. They're a rich resource for children, more than just financial, but spiritual and supportive and loving. And children need that to really do well in life.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Yeah, too often you hear, well, we've got a program and dads don't come, right? But I tend to think it's the way you're getting the word out about that program. Dads are interested, right?
Absolutely.
And they will come if they hear the right message in the right way. Yeah, and also dads will share their feelings, right? They don't necessarily know how to do that, but one of the things they learn in a program is how to get in touch with what they really are feeling, what they really do need, and then to share that with other men. I think it's the most powerful thing that happens in fatherhood work. You get a group of guys in the room together, and everybody does that self-reflection bit and starts.
Right, and they learn how to advocate for themselves and their children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what it's all about, yeah. So have we got Rodney and Corinne back for a final word?
Yes. Our final word, at least my final word, is in terms of agency partnerships. If your entity is looking to partner with any other agencies, is really having joint meetings to be able to really make the work effective and make sure that it's appropriate for the families that you serve. You can't do it on the separate sides of your fence. You definitely have to come and meet at the same table, and oftentimes with our parents, to be able to do that work.
And that's right. So it's not only got to be intentional work with parents, it's got to be an intentional partnership work. Right, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with what Tony was saying. Like, you got to make that extra effort to reach out to the father. Like what you were saying, like, a lot of times mom do the enrollment, but we need to ask about information about the father. And a lot of times when things go on in our programs, we contact mom instead of the dad. So we need to reach out and offer dad the same thing we offer the mom. And reach out and try to get them at the beginning of the year. All through the year, but make a strong effort at the beginning of the year so we can start from the beginning and end strong. And also, by the program, All Pro Dad, I also want people to watch up fathers.com and the Watchdog program. That's a national fatherhood program, because when you have something for fathers, you can get them integrated into your programs easier than than other times. So I would definitely try to get those two programs, and maybe something that can be useful to other people.
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't hurt to have that national support, right? Yeah. So Damon, I'll give you the opportunity for the final word here.
Thanks, Nigel. Just on behalf of the entire OFA team, we wanted to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. We really want to thank our practitioners out in the field and also our speakers. Like the other speakers have said, this is very intentional on focusing on the needs of the entire family. So really reach out to those fathers and include them in the discussions about the children and family services. So again, thank you on behalf of the Office of Family Assistance. Everyone have a good day.
And thanks, Damon, and thanks to you and the Office of Family Assistance for making this possible. Yeah, so, and again, I'll echo what you said about the presenters. You guys did a great job. Thank you very much. So everyone have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That does conclude today's call. We do thank you all for your participation. You may now disconnect.